Welcome to the Grow with the Flow podcast, the ultimate destination for all things D2C and e-commerce. I'm Dove Karp and my co-host is Dave Silverman. And today's episode is brought to you by Chargeflow, the leading chargeback automation solution for e-commerce merchants. Now, imagine a world where chargebacks are no longer a headache, where you can focus on growing your business while Chargeflow handles the rest. With cutting-edge AI technology, industry-leading win rates, and unparalleled accuracy, Chargeflow is revolutionizing the way merchants manage disputes and recover lost revenue. The best part? Chargeflow only charges for recovered revenue. No monthly fees, no long-term contracts, no hidden costs, just instant ROI. Stay tuned as we dive into the latest trends, success stories, and expert advice to help you scale your store and take your e-commerce business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or looking to optimize your operations, Grow with the Flow and Chargeflow have you covered. Remember, when it comes to chargebacks, let Chargeflow do the heavy lifting so you can focus on what matters most, growing your e-commerce business. So give Chargeflow a try today. It's easy to get started and there is no risk or obligation. So without further ado, let's get started. Today's guest is Eli Weiss. Eli is the VP Retention Advocacy at Yotpo. He has spent the last decade building and operating early-stage startups and is particularly known for his work around customer experience and retention at D2C brands such as Jones Road Beauty, Olipop, and Simulate. The episode was a little bit of a Frankenstein one, considering we had some technical difficulties, but it was still amazing, great value, and I hope you all enjoy. So Eli, it is so great to have you on the show. I really, really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I want to start off with understanding your journey from the beginning, we've spoken in the past about, you didn't have the standard educational background to, venturing into the world of CX and beyond. So can you kind of give our listeners a bit of a background?
Yeah, so I shared this story once or twice, but essentially I grew up in a pretty ultra-Orthodox universe, number 2 of 10 children. Didn't have a high school education or college degree. I started traveling in my early 20s with points and miles. Ended up in Israel in 2014, planned to be here for a couple of weeks, got stuck here for 4 years. And suddenly I'm in my early to mid 20s with no idea what I was going to do for a living. My edge up, kind of like my little bit I had was that I spoke English in a city that was full of startups and not a ton of native English speakers. That was my first foray. I just said, I'll get whatever job I can as long as I can be a valuable asset. I jumped into a luggage startup in 2016-ish, doing customer service, as well as a lot of other things such as email marketing and Amazon ads and Facebook ads and ops and logistics and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. Was there for 4 years. The company went from 17 employees to just me and the CEO to again growing with every fundraise. Was there for a while. That was my real life MBA, and then kind of jumped back to the States in 2018. In 2020, kind of COVID hit. Luggage was no longer a big seller, and I had a ton of kind of trouble getting a role after that because, well, I thought I had great experience. Nobody recognized the company, and I had no kind of college education to prove that I was worth something. Applied to like 85 roles and maybe got 1 or 2 interviews, and eventually realized that sharing online was more important than I thought it was. Continued kind of sharing online, and eventually that brought me to a small company called Simulate that was like a vegan chicken company. It was there for a short hop, skip, and a jump until I found Olipop, which was my real breakout role. I had no idea what they were. They were very small at the time. They were doing a couple of $1 million in revenue, mostly retail, not a ton of e-com. I was employee number 16 or 17 and was there for 2 years, kind of their first CX leader, and focused on retention as well. That ended up, Olipop in the last couple of years has gone from 0 to 500 million. So that was like a real incredibly lucky opportunity for me. And from there kind of got pulled into Jones Road, which was a bootstrapped, so very different than Olipop. Olipop raised a bunch of money. This was bootstrapped, quickly turned into a 9-figure business, founded by Bobby Brown. And that again was an opportunity to go a little bit wider on CX and retention, but still be at a super fast growing early stage startup. And it's kind of my foray into both CX and retention. And then 6-ish months ago, midlife crisis pulled me into a whole different universe, a universe of SaaS, the sharky seas of SaaS. And I've been at Yotpo for 6-ish months now, trying to build a future of retention. That's my 30-second / 6-minute spiel.
Nice. Okay, so you were talking about, you mentioned the idea about kind of putting content out online. You're seeing that it's more and more important to kind of build your own personal brand. How did you go about doing that? What was the beginning? When did you notice? When did you notice some real growth? And was it kind of like off the cuff, or was it like with a lot of intent, kind of going up, from the beginning?
Yeah, I think it's really challenging to start sharing online, especially if you're an introvert. It takes a lot of weird ego / confidence to think that what you're sharing is interesting to anyone. That's why a lot of people that share online are insufferable in real life, because they actually believe that they have things to share that nobody else knows. You find that most of the people that share online are like marketers, right? They're marketing themselves. They're growth marketers. They're salespeople. These are the people that share online. So for a retention or a CX person to share online is pretty weird, which is why nobody has. Like the few people that share in CX are super old people that have a media team that's sharing for them. There aren't any CX influencers. And that was kind of an interesting white space. I still had to detach tremendously in order to do it. It's uncomfortable and unnatural for me to share online, to do anything external or extroverted. I'm doing a webinar tonight that I've been dreading for 4 weeks. These aren't things that I'm excited or used to doing. For me, it was necessity. I realized that this was the only way that people know who I am. And it did bring me to these massive or super popular kind of quote unquote sexy brands that people are excited about in the zeitgeist today. But it's been an interesting journey. I started by sharing things that I felt interesting. Somebody who I met during COVID, Ben was kind of an interesting friend of mine, Ben Levy, who pushed me to, he said, what you're talking about is fascinating. I think people would want to hear. And I said, no, I don't think anyone's interested in this. And he said, no, I think people want to hear. And I started sharing, and slowly kind of you get 3 likes and 6 likes, and slowly you're following kind of, I think at that point in time I had like 300 followers, and all of a sudden it's 600 and it's 1,000 and it's 2,000. And you start looking at.
How quickly was that growth?
Months, years. I think the first 1,000 is the hardest. The first 5,000 is still hard, but not as hard. And once you're past 5,000, it's kind of like maybe 100 followers a week. Yeah. Depending on how much you share and how much you post. But the first 1,000 is brutal. And there's no tricks. Like you can have a bunch of hacks, like people pay for followers and people swap shout outs, and like all those things are very short term, because eventually once you're 20,000 followers deep, you're still going to get one follower, one like on every post, because you didn't build genuine engagement, right? So I think quality is more important than quantity. And I saw the same thing with my newsletter. Like just paying to have 100,000 subscribers doesn't necessarily make you more money or get you in a different place, and having a very, 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 very kind of quality and engaged audience that really trusts you, right? If I have 50,000 followers that don't care what I have to say about retention, when I say get this tool, nobody gives a shit, because they're not invested or interested or excited about what I have to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and you'll tweet a bunch of times and you won't get a single like, and you'll be like, well, that didn't land at all. Yeah.
Welcome to my life, bro.
I feel it.
I was like, this is gonna smack. It's gonna be great. I'm like, crickets.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, we good. We keep going.
The beauty is nobody saw it, right? Right. The beauty is,
your embarrassment is to yourself, because
exactly.
Yeah. Or me, that like 3 people. I'll tell you, actually, it's interesting. I've noticed that even with the content I share with my super micro, nano audience, right? I'll notice I'll put something out and it doesn't get too many likes, or it doesn't get too many comments. But then I'll have people come up to me and be like, oh, I saw that post you did the other day. That was really cool. I liked your idea or whatever. I was like, how? There was
you should have liked it. Well, the correct answer is, you son of a
Yeah,
You
you
should have hit
ruined
like.
my algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like that's like kind of that collateral growth, which is like it says, oh, it got 300 views, one like, one comment, and you're like, oh, it was an utter failure. Just like maybe it really wasn't, because there was 300 eyeballs on that for at least a millisecond. So maybe that was a little something. But I wanted to follow up on that. Was you're talking about like there's no real tricks, there's no whatever. Everybody in the marketing world and people who speak about growing their brand, especially online, talk about put this hashtag and make sure you use these keywords and use this type of image. And did you look into that? Did you research that? Or was this kind of all just like, listen, I'm just going to put myself out there and that's it, and we'll see what happens?
I personally, I think most of that is BS. I think almost all of that is BS. I think the only kind of surefire way to grow an engaging or an engaged audience from my experience was engaging with other people that are posting in similar circles. So back in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, I was engaging with all the D2C people, and I was in their comments and in their replies, not just like, haha, great post, but trying to add value and trying to show like, hey, I get it. Hey, I understand what you're sharing. Back in the Clubhouse kind of 2020 days, I would jump into all the D2C.
Oh, that paused for a second. We back?
Okay, we lost audio there.
Well, I'm back in.
Can
if you're back in. Yeah, we're good. Do you hear me?
Yeah, my headphones kind of tapped out.
That's all good. I still hear you as long as you hear me.
Okay, is it clear at all?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So you're talking about kind of like you jumped into the world of different people's conversations, Clubhouse, so on and so forth.
So in the Clubhouse days, being in those conversations around D2C and showing that I have a different, not a better, but a different understanding in how CX looks and how CX sounds. And especially once I joined Olipop, it's like, oh, Eli, can you tell us what you saw at Olipop? So jumping on borrowing credibility from the people you're around or the brands you're working at has been like a more valuable asset than hashtagging or liking or whatever. But organic social human behavior is not to see a tweet and like it. Like, people don't generally like even a fraction of the tweets they see. For somebody to like a tweet, it's a meaningful kind of like, not only did I like it, not only did I think it was interesting, but I want to kind of put my stamp of approval on it. And to follow somebody, you have people that go viral 10 times a week and still gain like a handful of followers, because to follow somebody is like multiple at-bats. Like, I saw something valuable multiple times that I don't want to miss the next one. But I think it's just being around the people that, like, I was engaging with the Nick Sharmas of the world, and we became friends back then. And then who was he friends with, and who was he engaging with back in the Clubhouse days? I met this guy, Matt from Lomi, and, suddenly he becomes popular, and then he's on the podcast trail. And it's such a small community, especially in D2C. It's like, find your niche and kind of go hard with those people versus creating a following of 300,000 people that none of them are remotely relevant. If I had the choice of having 1,000 engaged fans versus 100,000 unengaged, I would choose 1,000 any day of the week. That's like the key to, in my opinion, of building anything meaningful online.
With that in mind, did you keep your responses and your content very specific when it comes to CX? Like, you didn't branch out into other types of things? Like, did you talk about sports, or did you talk about other types of interests,
I always had a fear that, like, as my following would get larger, and this is Eli at 300 followers or 1,000 or 2,000, my thought was, like, my fear was, I wonder if I suddenly become known as the CX person, and then I can't post a picture of my son, or I can't post a picture of the pizza I'm eating because it's not me. So it was always super, super, super important for me to be authentically me online. And what that means is I've been shitposting since I started. Like, my replies are always kind of shitposting and sarcastic and dry, because that's who I am. I tried my best to be myself, because ultimately I learned from others that have built a large audience, and suddenly they can't tweet about things they're interested in, because it's not like their image as the X guy or the Y gal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was always super. And you look at the legends in this space, like these people tweet like they talk. They're not just kind of like buttoned up and hashtaggy unless how they are. That's how they are online, but unless that's how they are in real life. But it's always been kind of my newsletter as well. I think I'm within the space. Ari Murray from Go to Millions kind of also I'd say has like a similar approach. She writes about things that she's like the bag she's looking to buy and the sweater her husband bought. Like she kind of does similar, but that's always been super exciting. It's like I always start off my newsletter with the things I did this week or the things I care about this week or the coffee I had or the place I went to. I've written about hotels I stayed at because I love hospitality and CX. And I felt like I wrote a newsletter about my experience at the Waldorf in Amsterdam because I thought that was like so exciting to write about CX in hotels. And that's always
Do you
been
always
like,
tie it back in?
What's that?
Do you always tie it back in? Or do
I try to like, the beginning doesn't necessarily have to be tied in. It's like my life. That's what I've been up to this week. And then we jump in and we talk about what's meaningful. But I try to tie it back into the things I care about, which is great experiences and customer retention and giving a shit about customers, kind of like things that I've been passionate about forever. And that's why, like, to some people, it's been like confusing how I jumped into SaaS. But for me, it's always been that, right? It's always about experience. And it's always about making people feel like what they pay for is worth what they paid for it, right?
Yeah, it's
and
not
that's
the
like
industry, it's the experience.
It's always the experience. Yeah.
Great transition. Let's talk about customer experience. If you were going to, you said you came in Olipop kind of for the most part on the ground up, considering where they're at right now. What were the first steps that you came in and when you saw and you're trying to like audit the company, like these are areas in CX that we need to address from day one?
I think Olipop was an interesting one because they built I wouldn't say massive, but a sizable at that point. At that point, they were in like California and slowly transitioning into New York, et cetera. But they built an impressive business online, but impressive business in retail, but online was kind of still starting, and COVID was an interesting point to transition. And when I jumped in, there was a good setup in terms of like the software they were using. I made like a couple of small switches to try to save some money, but there was a pretty good system in place. And for me, it was, how can I set expectations well? This is a soda that's, Olipop created a space, like healthy, expensive, kind of like healthy soda. Didn't exist before that. So for somebody to pay $2.50, back then it was probably $2.99, $3.49 for a can of soda, when you're saying this is a soda, this is a better for you soda, but they're used to paying 49 cents for a soda. Mm-hmm. And you're not, like obviously there's the Frappuccinos and there's Health Aid Kombucha, but you're calling this a soda because you're aligning with that soda market, but the pricing doesn't really make sense. For us, that was a good opportunity to set expectations of when you get the product, how should that feel like? How should the emails post-purchase be setting you up expectation-wise for the experience you're going through? How should you think about the value for the price you pay? Like the biggest reason why somebody wouldn't repurchase is like, I made a one-time decision to go crazy and splurge and spend $35 for a 12-pack, but should I do this again? Is there a value in having this long-term? So a lot of that is kind of jumping into the retention side of the business and saying, what experience should customers go through post-purchase? What experience should they have when they get the product? We have a subscription program that's suddenly close to 50% of our revenue. How should those people be feeling differently when the pricing is better, but that's like, how should we create a different experience? Whether it was like the stickers we put in every box, that we would often kind of put a can-shaped sticker of the next new flavor that's unreleased in the box for subscribers the month before, just to kind of feel like they're part of this family, this community of early access. That was like something we did in 2020, 2021 before anyone else did. But there was a lot of excitement, kind of like, how do we think about unboxing in a meaningful way? And then we had so many stories about kind of above and beyond experience where like somebody ordered Olipop for their wedding as like a special drink. And it was like super stressful because it didn't ship on time and it ended up getting there 2 days before. And Ariel on our CX team asked them like, hey, I see you have great taste. You're buying Olipop for your wedding. What can I see your wedding registry? Is that crazy? I want to see what you got. I'm getting married myself. And then we went out to their registry and ordered like a super fancy waffle machine from the Olipop team for them, just like as a thank you for the patience they had and the understanding they had. So these little moments costed us $50 to $300 per time. And we had so many of these, so many. Like I can think of 10 others where this was just giving a shit and spending pennies compared to what we were making on these meaningful experiences. And again, this is not something you can like say like, oh, I'm going to institute a surprise and delight and press 3 buttons. Is like you have to have people that think that way, to ask those questions, to come up with a gift that's actually thoughtful and not here's a blanket. Right. So those like, yeah, it's fun to give somebody a blanket, but how can you get really thoughtful and strategic so that you're so shocked that your soda company is doing something so thoughtful for you?
Is that something that you can train? I guess it's kind of like a world of like empathy, and it's thinking deeper. For example, I know like my mother, you're talking about like kind of surprise and delight. My mother-in-law, I remember she had an uncle, and we used to go visit him. He was much older. He was a very sweet man. And, as he was getting older, all he was doing kind of watching TV from time to time. But it was an old TV set. So one day he tells me, she doesn't tell me. He tells me, he's like, I came home the other day and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door and there's a person from B&H, one of the big stores. And they're like, oh, is this for Mr. Brown? He's like, no, I didn't order anything. They're like, no, like, I'm pretty sure it's your name here or whatever. And he's like, what? And he realized it was my mother-in-law. She knows he likes watching TV. That's what he's doing. Sits for hours. Had an old TV. Wasn't really working great. He didn't say anything. She went above and beyond. She's like, what can I do to do something kind for this person? And that's kind of, I guess maybe that's a little bit of the training that you can get into the world of CX is what can I do to make this person feel appreciated?
I love this. I love that story. I think the largest part of this is following the lead. Like people do what people follow the lead of their leaders. And I think leading a mediocre CX team is putting a scoreboard and say, let's see who can hit the highest amount of tickets today. And leading, like the wired versus tired, that's tired and wired is kind of like encouraging people to think out of the box and create moments that are impactful for customers and to drive real brand excitement, not just like answer as many tickets as you can and win a free X. And I think that has to start not just from a CX leader, that has to start from a brand, from a CEO. Like if you're fighting over a $20 budget to send a free magnet, you're kind of you already lost. So I think it does. And early in my career, I'd say like, oh, I can fix anyone's CX. And today it's like, no, I think I can be helpful in like maybe 10% of brands, because only 10% of brands genuinely care enough to put their money where their mouth is. And not to say it's a money problem or a money solution, but it does start from the leader the CEO all the way to the top has to have a vision of, hey, we want to do what Chewy's doing, or we want to be super, super thoughtful around CX, maybe at 5% of what they're doing, but we want to think differently about CX. And it's not like a come in, throw a deck together and get 2 people to raise their hand. It's much deeper.
It's thinking beyond and doing, ultimately it's doing the work that most people don't want to do. It's going that extra mile to do a little more research. Like, oh, that's interesting. Noticing a little bit of the outliers and digging deeper into that. Awesome. That's fantastic. I wanted to talk about kind of the interplay between CX and retention and how it works, how you kind of transitioned into this role. How long have you been at Yotpo now?
I've been at Yotpo for 6-ish months. 7 months. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe you can explain a little bit what you're doing over there, working in retention.
Do you remember Tucker Carlson went to Russia and he spoke to Putin? Did you see that interview? Like at some point halfway through, he asked him a question. He goes on like a 40-minute
was it a history lesson?
And that's like anyone that asks me this question, I feel like I want to go into like a Putin-esque a history lesson of like retention.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, but I'll give you the TLDR. I'll give you
the Palmer Luckey. One episode on defense, and he's Andoril, right? It's 45 minutes on the history of defense in America.
I love it.
Just start in 1847.
Yeah. I'll give you the full the TLDR. But essentially, like
retention, if you look back 20 years, not 100, but if you look back 20 years, it was just a bunch of people that knew how to build the old school CRM and would just blast emails, and you use the constant contacts, the eventual MailChimps that kind of like just send. Email is a fairly new channel. Like, it didn't exist 40 years ago. So people just kind of used it as a new channel and just pushed and pushed and pushed. And eventually they hit the jackpot and it kept making money. And then email kind of slowly, there's like, is email dying? Is email dead? Regardless, you kind of seeing the same thing with SMS, where they push, and eventually kind of it breaks, or Florida creates new laws, or Texas says absolutely not, or like there's that dynamic. So as a CX person, I always sat really closely to retention, because the best way, I mean, like, let's be real, the best way to get a customer back is great product. Like, Apple doesn't need to send you 500 emails. It's great product, great brand. Outside of the Apples and the Nikes, and Nike spends a shitload of money on marketing, but outside of those people, it's like getting in front of the right customer with the right messaging at the right time is how you retain those customers. I've always been, even at Olipop, I was leading retention for a couple of months. I was sitting very closely to the agency that was running retention. I've always had, at Fugu, at the luggage brand, I was always touching email. I wrote the emails, I sent the emails. I kind of like added it to my title and my repertoire kind of later on, when I realized that there's a beauty in those two. Like, if you look at almost any other two teams in the company, I think there's more value with CX and retention being close together than almost any other two teams, just because knowing what your customers are saying about your product / what they love, what they hate, and everything else is kind of like the easiest way to get you to the right messaging to the right customer. So, for example, abandoned cart messaging is like, hey, 20% off for the next 10 minutes. That doesn't touch any part of your soul. But if you understand the reason why people don't always click is because they have a fear that X, Y, and Z, you can nail that in the messaging of like, FYI, this makeup doesn't smudge, right? And now you just like, so those kind of easy things were exciting for me. And then I've always been super passionate about not spamming and being thoughtful around messaging. And that was kind of like my foray into retention, was like, this is my hypothesis. I think it could work. And I've jumped into, Olipop. I was working on the retention side of the business, and Jones was like my first time really touching retention. I learned pretty quickly. I think I learned pretty quickly when I fail or when I could do things better. And for me at Jones, I learned I was a very valuable asset to retention. I was a great CX leader. When it came to the data on the retention side, I lacked a little bit. I'm not a spreadsheet kind of person, and we didn't have an analyst. And for me, it was always difficult. It's like, I don't feel like I'm being as helpful as I could be on this side. That kind of, you also asked about Yotpo. So like that kind of combination of what I was passionate about, what I was excited about retention, of like this idea that you could send personalized communications with the right message to the right person. We're just not doing it because technology's all over the place. Exactly, like, customers that buy X will buy Y. Customers that buy Y within 24 days will buy Y again within that ballpark. You have all these data points. Somebody gave you a 5-star review will probably be more excited to buy than somebody that gave you a 1-star review. If they gave you a 1-star review, they might buy the other product. You have all that data. Massive brands do that with the CDP, right? Like, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with the CDP to get the right message.
Can you explain CDP?
CDP is a customer data platform, which essentially is housing all these touch points in one place. So you have everything about a customer in one place, and then you can use that to push out.
How is that different than a CRM?
So CRM is kind of like the basic, just name, email, location. Okay. CDP can house hundreds of data points depending on like who you're using, what you're using at a very basic level. So CDP is kind of like Klaviyo offers one, a bunch of Snowflake, you can build one inside. There are a bunch of CDPs, but I think CDP is kind of like the much more elevated version with all these data points. And theoretically, so I have this moment where I'm focusing on building. I have a midlife crisis, which I don't know if I've shared publicly, but I had kind of like a midlife crisis at the age of 30, where I realized that like the newsletter is doing well, and I don't know that I need to work to pay rent. So like, if I'm going to work, I want to do something that challenges me in a massive way. I want to have a lot of fun doing it. Like, I realize the 3 things I care about is like a really big challenge, want to have fun, and want to work with super, super smart people. This is August, September when I had this kind of crisis. I realized that I just was not, just because I did the same thing for 10 years, it doesn't mean that I want to do it for the next 10. Like, I didn't go to school for this. It was like what I jumped into, what I landed in, what I was excited about. I've always been passionate about diversifying the things I do. I don't want to just be the CX guy in D2C. Like, it's not my aspirations. I think society pushes back when you make a change like that. Like people will be like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Why is he going? It's like you saw a few tweets, like you don't know anything about what I'm excited about. But I had this moment where I realized that I don't care about the space. I don't care about the company size. I don't care about anything other than those three things. Jones Road is going to be $1 billion company with or without me, the same way Olipop was going to be a $500 to $1 billion company with or without me. And there's a certain desire to have real meaning and bring real heat to something. I connected with a couple of founders in September of like, hey, what do you think? Like, this company's going to exit at a crazy, crazy number, and I'm leaving crazy amount of money, like an unspeakable amount of money on the table by leaving now. Do I do it? And I spoke to a lot of like incredible founders, probably 6 or 7 people, and they were all like, yes, you should go. And one of the people I spoke to was Tomer from Yotpo. I knew of Yotpo from like being in Tel Aviv and seeing the name on the building. I knew of Yotpo as a customer that churned twice because they were expensive and super, super, super aggressive. Like I didn't have good experiences with Yotpo at all. I had to clean tweets before.
This is great branding, by the way.
This is great, and this is exactly.
And he's gonna fix it. Don't worry, it's coming up.
So
they hired me, and now they're awesome.
Yeah. So I cleaned tweets. I literally had to clean tweets before I started, and I was excited about Yotpo because I don't think enough people understand where they're headed to and the vision they have. And that is the, everyone looks for the one insight that made them do the next thing, or the one insight that got them excited about something. And my one insight was every single person I spoke to at Yotpo was shockingly kind and like shockingly sharp, insanely intelligent people with like crazy kind. And that's not at all the image you have on the internet. On the internet, you have aggressive, they're trying to screw me. And they've made decisions in the past 12 to 14 years that weren't necessarily good decisions. And Tomer has spoken about that publicly in the last few months. It's like what drove them to the decisions they made. And they stand behind that. Like Tomer will get on a call any day and say like, yeah, we messed up. We charged too much money for something that wasn't necessarily, like we had a lot of features. Nobody needs X, Y, and Z and reviews. We were too expensive. But again, like, the insight that I had that made me excited was these are the sharpest people having a great time building fantastic product. And a lot has gotten lost in the wind in the last 10 years. And you look at almost Klaviyo became a villain. Recharge became a villain. Shopify became a villain. Everyone became a villain. Like any business that got past 100 million in ARR in this ecosystem became a villain. Attentive became a villain. Like everyone became a villain. And I'm excited about the soul of things. Like I'm excited about what they could do. And when I took this job and the job was amorphous and blurry and the title meant nothing. And it was just Tomer's pitch was, you're an entrepreneur without risk tolerance. I have an ability to give you the best time of your life building and solving problems that you love to solve without any gates. Like just jump in, find the thing you're excited and build. And that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't jump in for the money, didn't need that, didn't jump in for the fame, because definitely didn't get that, right? This is a company that wasn't loved. Didn't jump in for like the crazy title. I jumped in because it's the first time in my life I felt excited about solving a problem. And again, it's like, I'm excited about the vision. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm okay failing. Like I've had a few good successes under my belt as an operator. Like I've worked at some monster brands. If I fail, totally okay. I don't think I will, but if I do, I'm totally okay failing. And then the upside is, and again, like I joined I got messages from very close friends of mine being like, dude, this is a mistake. And I'm like, I love you. Thanks for the support. I needed that. But this is a mistake. Like everyone loves you. You're killing your brand. Like you're like a loved guy in e-com. Everyone loves you. And now you're joining like the most hated, whatever. And then, come to Tel Aviv, week 2, tweet a photo of the office, and one of the like super popular Twitter people retweets it and it's like, beautiful office because they rip people off for the last 12 years. And I'm like, and I was like, this is the most beautiful moment of my life because now I can take this and show the epitome of this like loathsome, crazy, corrupt hate of a company for having an office, right? Mm-hmm. So I retweeted and I say like, this is exactly why I joined Yotpo. Like, watch us cook. And that was like a moment where I was like, okay, this is easier than I thought because you don't even have a reason to hate them. Okay, they ripped you off. The pricing is better now. They're going to apologize. Like we can solve almost everything other than like your 15-year-old beef. And I had beef with them too. Trust me. Like I've had beef with them too. And if you don't want to see something change because you think they should die because of something they did 10 years ago, yeah, you can F off. That's okay. Like that's fine. But there is a beauty in watching things evolve. And there's a beauty in watching things become something different than they are, because that's life, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be the same forever. You're okay. Like you want your partner to become better. You want your kids to be better. But like when a company does a mistake twice, you're like, nah, they should die. Right? It's a weird phenomenon. And I'm okay being like mildly hated by a few bullies on the internet. Like that makes me feel alive again. So that's kind of why I joined.
So,
how do you drive that change? Because we started from personal change, and you talked about how you got into Yotpo.
Yeah.
Over here, you touched on like, is this what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
This opportunity to build, which is inherent.
Yeah.
And then like what that looks like, bringing your soul into a company, building there. You're not building on a fresh piece of paper. You got to rebuild not even a neutral name. A tough name. And it seems like this is not, I don't know if it's 100% on you, but there's a lot that goes into CX over here.
Yeah. So it's a very, very good question, an important question that I asked myself. Like before I took the job, so I met Tomer for the first time, not to talk about Yotpo. I met him to talk about like, hey, I've heard great things about you. You've been following my newsletter for a while. We've been like friendly. We've never spoken. I want to ask your point of view on like, am I crazy for dropping like the best job in my career? And we got to talking, and he says like, would you ever join SaaS? And I was like, get out of here. Like no chance. Like, why? That's crazy. And we've like, before even entertaining something like this, I said like, let me meet more people on the team. And the first thing I saw in meeting everyone was nobody was in denial about why they have the name they have. Like everyone's like, yeah, we get it. And everyone's like, no, we're eager to change. Like we don't know. Like we don't know how. It's like a DNA is substantial. Like we need to change the way we hire. We need to change the way we lead, change the way we price. Like there are so many changes we're willing to do. We don't have like a shepherd in showing what better looks like in certain parts of the business. Without that, it's impossible. Like if you're hired at a company like, hey, I want to show, and I'm not hired to change Yotpo. I'm hired to help highlight the part that people aren't seeing and help kind of like guide towards that change. And that change is on sales, it's on CS, it's on product, it's on marketing, it's on branding, it's on every part of the business. But they were eager to improve and develop over time without me there. And I think I've just been somebody that was able to highlight that, hey, trust me, somebody that's hated them, these aren't, you never got a real view, as you saw like little pieces and you may have gotten screwed in the process, which sucks. But yet again, this is the largest challenge of my career by a mile, and I'm totally okay failing. I don't think I will, but if I do, that's like probably learn more from this job. I've already learned more in 6 months on this side of the volley than I've learned in years before that. And I wake up every morning wired. Like this is like it's a real challenge. So
it sounds like the thing that really gets you going is the challenge. Like it sounds like once you've, even in our previous discussions, once you've kind of feel like you hit the top of the mountain, you're kind of like, okay, now what?
It's a curse. I think it's a curse. Well, depends who you ask.
It's a blessing and a curse. It's all how you view it.
Yeah.
It's okay to move to a new mountain.
Yeah.
That's the most important, but it shouldn't make you miserable.
Yeah.
But obviously you're being pushed to move up and up and up. So I want to just take a step back. You were talking about how, you're looking for challenges. You're like, what's, my purpose, where am I really going with this? It sounds like solving this new challenge or being a part of solving the challenge is very exciting to you. Where potentially do you see yourself going personally, professionally? What are some, I guess, let's call it big goals that potentially you have?
Yeah. I think aspiration is a weird thing to have, because it kind of puts you in that blessing curse territory very often, right? Where you're like, okay, now what? And it can be 2 months into something and you're like, I want to do something bigger.
1,000%.
Yeah. It's a really, really I think it's more of a curse and a blessing as somebody I struggle with it, because it's like being okay building something slowly, knowing it takes time, is a challenge for me. I had no clue. I mean, absolutely not. My dad told me to go into sales, and I said, like, I hate people. Why would I? Like, I don't want to talk to people. But I think what I learned is I love the science of people. I love the way people think. I love kind of like moving, changing things over time. And that's what CX is, right? Like, CX is inherently building. It's not necessarily we're giving you more gifts. It's where we're changing the expectations. We're setting expectations we can actually beat. So maybe we're promising less in the front end. Like, that's the easiest way to change CX, is stop promising things you can't solve. Stop promising things you can't deliver. So I've always been in the business of like, how do we change? How do we evolve? I had no idea. Like, I didn't dream I'd be here 10 years ago. I think career-wise, I feel way, way, way ahead. I feel like I can do nothing for 10 years and I'll still feel good about myself, what I've built today.
In a very short period of time, I gotta say.
Yeah. And I think it's shocking to me. Like, I have imposter syndrome, so I balance that with I have more confidence now than I had maybe 10 years ago. So I know that I've made the right decisions. I know I've had a lot of luck, and I've been in the right places, and I've met the right people. But also, knowing what I know now in the last 10 years, it's extremely hard to predict what 10 years will get. But I think where 10 years will get me. But I think a few things I'm excited about is, number one, like a month into SaaS, like that tweet that I got where like, your fancy office, like, I was like, wow, I became the villain so quickly. Wow. Not a single person that said I'm the nicest guy online. I never fight with people. I never banter. Like, if you're abusive to me, I might block you, but like, that's as far as it goes. I'm not that kind of person. I was like the internet's nice guy. And I was like, I took a job somewhere you didn't like, and wow, that was fast. So I learned really quickly that the SaaS side, just monsters. Like, some people in SaaS are kind of crazy for no reason. Like, we're all selling the same thing. There's enough bread for everyone, and people are kind of nuts. Like, I didn't see this at least in beauty and beverage. I didn't see this kind of like crazy cuckoo catty behavior. That's like, number one is like, I intend on solving that. Like, not for the world, but for like the universe that I'm in. Like, absolutely not. No, you're not going to be catty about like a little deal that you lost like $1,000 on. Like,
so you want to change the vibe of the community.
I want to bring more kindness into SaaS. Like, I don't intend on being part of this like catty, crazy, cuckoo culture. I want to touch more industries. Like, I was always the CX guy in D2C. Now I'm the guy that's in SaaS. I think I'll be in hospitality at some point in my career. I think I'll be in fintech at some point in my career. Like,
Chargeflow's hiring.
So at some point in my career, when I was at Olipop, before Jones, I got to like final interview with Built, which is like the credit card you pay rent. It's now like billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Probably miss over there, but like that, I was willing to jump into that. That's not at all my territory. I think I'm excited about learning, and I hate sitting in a desk at college. So this is, for me, like, this is a learning experience. I've like done a podcast. I've stopped the podcast. I've done the newsletter. I don't know if it'll last forever. I think
built a community, if I remember correctly.
I did. So at some point, I was telling you, at some point I realized like meeting people is what is like, every job I've gotten was either from Twitter or from people that I've met, but I hate happy hours. I hate going out. And most people in my universe of like CX and retention people aren't super outgoing. So I started meeting people in 2021, and I said, like, why don't we just host like a little Discord, because Slack costs money. That's really why. Discord was free, and invited a couple of friends invited their friends, and today there's like 1,300 plus people, CX people, operators that are in that. That's like another kind of like opportunity for me to bring people that care about the same thing of like kindness and empathy, and create a space for people that isn't like a black and white kind of like, if you win, I fail. But I'm soft. I'm a soft individual, and I like kind people. Like, sue me. I don't like assholes. And I think most of my career I was told like, suck it up. There are assholes here. And now I'm like, no, I don't think I need to, like, if you're going to be an asshole, I don't think I need to work with that. I think I can just swerve. But I have no idea what 5, 10, 12 years will bring, but I don't know where I'll be living. I don't know what I'll be doing. Everything in my life has been optimized for like what makes me happy today and what makes me feel fulfilled. And the crazy part about that is like, and my wife's the polar opposite in med school, kind of like taking this like long-term approach. She's been working on this for 10 years.
Wow.
She met me. I had no job, like she helped me get my high school diploma. It's like we're on completely straight up. Yeah. She taught me algebra, geometry.
I'm in a similar situation. My wife is a nurse practitioner, and she's like the go-getter, like did it all, whatever, just buy the book. I'm just like, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
step by step.
A relationship needs both.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you use that initial platform of like 1,000 whatever people to start the newsletter? Like, was that the pivot?
No, the Discord was never like touched in that way. The newsletter started from, I was traveling. I was in Miami, traveling to like a conference, and I was staying in a place with my friend Shrey and my friend Cody, and we were hanging out with Nick, and they were all like, you should start a newsletter. And I was like, maybe I should. And I tweeted like, hey, is anyone interested in a newsletter about CX and retention? And right away people were like, yes, of course. And I was like, okay, and anyone interested in sponsoring this thing? And I got like somebody, Wonderment, slid in my DMs. They're like, we're taking the first 6, whatever it costs.
What?
And this is like,
how many followers did you have at the time?
Must have had probably 10,000-ish on Twitter. Within 24 hours, I had 1,000 subscribers on the newsletter. And they took the first 6 weeks for $1,000 each. And it's been 110. It's been 2 years since then. Every single week has been like sponsored and growing. And it's again, like it could die in 6 weeks. It could die in 4 weeks. But that's
and you didn't plan any of this out. There's this very interesting theme that I'm seeing in the people who tend to kind of rise towards the tops of their industries, is that nothing was planned. It was all just kind of, all right, let's just take advantage of an opportunity. It sounds interesting. I know I catch myself like saying like, oh, I gotta reach this place, or I gotta do that thing, or whatever it is. But it's oftentimes the thing that you're just like, let me just go with the flow, or grow with the flow.
nice.
Oh, snap.
Oh,
there it is.
I thought you need that button.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
Yeah, we do have one of those. But
No, that's usually the voice.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're working on the buttons.
I think my hypothesis career-wise was I need a job. That was like the first 5 years of my career. Like, just get this guy a job. And I think at some point once like Olipop was a real moment where I was like, my hypothesis has changed to be a kind person that people want to work with and see where that takes you and go after things you're excited about. And when I left Olipop, it was like, is this the worst decision of my life? Like, what am I doing? Like, Jones Road found me. They want to hire me. But like, Olipop is crushing. Everyone loves them. Like, why am I jumping into a beauty brand? I'm a guy. I know Bobby Brown is the founder. She interviews me. She's like, why am I talking to you? Like, you're a dude that knows nothing about makeup. The other person I'm interviewing is like 10 years of experience at Tiffany's. She's like a makeup artist. Like, why? And I was like, shit, that's a good question. I don't know. And then I kind of like, my brain just goes into like immediate pitch where I'm like, listen, the person that's doing 10 years is going to bring you kind of like generic, basic, the same thing that they had at Tiffany's. You don't want that. You want to do things your way. You've only gotten to where you are because you want to do things your way. Like, I will do things. I'm going out of the book. Like, I'm going to do things differently and make you a brand that's known for it. And if you want business as usual, I'm probably not the person. The reverse sell, the old school reverse sell. And it worked. And I think for me, it hasn't been linear. Like, I don't think anyone can look outside and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Luggage to a soda brand to makeup. Yeah, it's like kind of all CX, but it hasn't been all like pure CX. And now he's like, oh, and now he went from like loved brands to like the villain in SaaS. Interesting, right? None of it adds up. It's just, I think ultimately you're alone in the decisions you make of like, it's not going to be my wife and my kid working every day at Yotpo. It's me. And it's not going to be the guy on Twitter that's mad at me. He's not going to be working this job. And ultimately it's me making decisions on like, will I be excited to wake up and go to the office tomorrow? Okay, that's a win. What happens in 6 months? I don't know. I hope it evolves and I hope I continue learning. What happens in 2 years? I don't know. If it's not fun, will I leave? I don't know. I'll probably stick it out because this feels like a really good challenge that's going to take a while. What happens after that? Hell if I know. I mean, I didn't think I'd be here.
So, all right. So with that being said, and to kind of sum up, I'm going to have two questions. The first question is, do you have a mentor? Is there somebody that you go to kind of bounce ideas back and forth to help guide you in certain decisions? I know it sounded like you were speaking to a bunch of people. Is there a specific person, or do you kind of, it's a committee? How do you go about making big decisions?
I don't. The first time I ever asked like for big decisions was this leaving Jones, because it was like, it's going to be a life-changing exit and my life is not going to be changed by that exit. So I was leaving a substantial amount of money on the table. And that's why I was asking, like, is this me and my feels being like, this is not bringing me as much joy as I wanted it to? Like, should I just grow up and get over it? Like, and that was like a decision I feel like I needed help, but I don't have any mentor.
Who did you go to for that?
So for the Jones Road decision, I spoke to like a couple of founders in the space, like that have built decent sized businesses, that have hired a bunch of people. And my thought was like, here are the things I'm feeling. Do you think it'll change? And that was like I wanted their expertise on like how businesses are built and how businesses evolve, and like the things I'm feeling and the way the business is being built. Do you think that'll change in a meaningful way? And it was like a black and white, like yes or no. And most people said, no, what you're describing is not going to change. If you want to change that, you're going to go. I don't like, I, in a bizarre kind of way, it's just, I've always been going with my gut. My gut is like the gut of like a traumatized child. So it guards me very well.
Those are the most successful people, by the way.
Yeah, well, I definitely.
I'm not even joking. It literally is.
Yeah, so it guards me in a very helpful way. It's like I generally catch, like I've gotten one like kind of bad job, and I found my way out 6-8 weeks later. But outside of that, I've never been like, I maybe overguard myself, and that's why I don't take a ton of risk like outside of a job. But I don't have like a mentor, which is contrary to most people. Like ultimately at the end of the day, it's me making decisions that make me happy. And for me to like, yes, I can talk to my therapist and build like a cost benefit analysis, right? Like it's a pros and cons list, but ultimately the most, and I've been in therapy for 10 years. So I have a distinct understanding of my brain and how I operate. And I know if there's something scaring me, it's probably helpful. And I know that the way I feel doesn't have to be me today. It can be me 10 years ago. And it's helpful for me to sit in my own thoughts and spend like an hour or two thinking like, okay, but where's this fear really coming from? And where's this excitement really coming from? Is this like me? Is this like I was going to say like Vayetzi Yaakov Harana kind of, I don't know if the audience will get that. But like,
for the biblical scholars out there.
Is this like me trying to leave this thing, or is this me trying to go to the other thing? Like what's the excitement here? And if it's me trying to leave this thing, then maybe I shouldn't be going to the other thing. Maybe I should fix this, or maybe I should leave but go somewhere else. Like, is this me more excited about the journey than?
But you're in. It sounds like you're in tune with yourself. Two things I think are the major takeaways about the decisions that you made is that one, it seems that you don't make rash decisions. It seems that you think about them. You try to, it's calculated.
Yeah,
that's the risk averse thing. And two, you're okay with failure.
Yep.
And being okay with failure, I think, is the most liberating thing ever.
Yeah.
Fear of failure can paralyze you from moving forward and get you stuck in a place that you might not want to be in, but you're more afraid of the unknown. So it sounds like you're not so afraid of the unknown. You're not afraid of failure. And I think, that's contributed towards that success, towards maybe the connection that you have with your audience.
Yeah.
You give off the vibe of just like, I'm just like a normal person. I mean, you are.
Yeah.
But people are like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I'll tell you, I just found this guy on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he's like a guy in his late 20s, early 30s. Nothing special going on in his life. He's just like, this is me going to work in my 9-to-5 job. And I'm like, this is the most amazing, satisfying content I've ever seen. Because he's not like, I'm jumping out of an airplane, let's go. Yeah. He's just like, got in my car, went to work, was at my desk.
Lunch break.
Lunch break. Yeah. Played basketball, took the dog on a walk.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is this so satisfying?
Yeah.
it's that relating to
it's
that,
beautiful.
you know?
Yeah, it is
I want to
beautiful.
add, like, with all of your risk averseness, the entrepreneurial side does show,
Yep.
not just in thinking, but in action. And where I'm seeing the jumps of your career really are from the community side. Every time you decide to put yourself out there to publish,
Yep.
to be more vocal on Twitter, to put out a newsletter, those brought new milestones with it. And it's, for some people, like that is the risk.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to figure out that I'm only doing whatever that I don't know, or can I share?
Yeah. No, it's valid. I think for me, it's also been like, I've succeeded in getting my first job. Like I shouldn't have even gotten that job. Like people like me work in their cousin's bakery or like their father's whatever, or their father-in-law's
Nursing home.
or the mortgage business or the car leasing. Like people like me don't work at places like this.
Yeah.
Like to me, this is all gravy. Like this is all like, I've worked at some of the fastest growing, incredible brands. I've learned a ton. Like I can retire today, not financially, but like mentally, I can be like, okay, this feels like I've had a good run. And the depressing part of that would be I didn't take enough risk. And that to me is like, if I had like this magical, terrible failure and a company went out of business tomorrow, I will have no problem getting a job. So even that to me is like, yeah, it's kind of risky. It's not really. Like I can go work at some other soda brand tomorrow, like theoretically. And that's also kind of like makes me feel like it's never really that risky. And that is why I encourage people to like share online and share on Twitter, because that's the only thing you own, right? If my newsletter dies tomorrow, I still have an audience I built that cares about the same things I care about. If the company goes out of business tomorrow, I still have an audience that knows that I'm good at my job. And that's like the only thing you own.
So I guess we'll finish with this last point, because I really appreciate your time. And I know you got a lot going on. What would you say out of everything is the biggest piece of advice that you can give somebody who's, trying to get, let's just say, their career either started to the next level, whatever it is? What would you say to them?
I think the most impactful thing for me has been finding the side door, back door, whatever you call it. Like, I think if I went through a traditional application process, and I know because I've done it the first 5 years of my career, I never got an interview. Like I have a list of 85 companies I've applied to in 2020. 99% of them didn't even give me an interview.
Blacklist.
Nothing. Zero.
They saw your Twitter.
Yeah. Like not even an interview.
He's too nice.
No, he doesn't have an education. And he never worked at a brand we know of. And I learned very quickly that education is one qualifier. Another qualifier is working at a cool company. Like if you worked at Airbnb, you'll never have a hard time finding a job. If you have a Harvard education, you'll be okay. If you have any kind of like decent college education, you'll be fine. If you don't have those qualifiers, it takes somebody taking a risk. You know who the least risk takers are? The HR department. They gain nothing from taking a risk. They gain nothing. Like they would rather know that Dollar Shave Club hired this person, and that just solves like 50%. Okay, this guy's not a serial killer. Right? Like this guy's not terrible if he went through these companies. And I was never able to get past that first screening. Like I couldn't get past like the HRIS kind of like machine. And I learned, and again, this is maybe not useful insight for everyone, but it's useful to a portion of people, is getting to the people that actually make those higher decisions. It might not be the CEO. It might be if I went through Yotpo's HR department and applied for a job, I would not be sitting there today.
Okay. So then that was going to be the last one, but then we have to follow up.
Yeah.
Because you said it so nonchalantly.
Yeah.
Just get in touch with the people
Yes.
that you need to get in touch with.
Yes.
How do you do that?
So a lot of it is building credibility online. Like ultimately, if you have 2 followers and not a real photo of yourself and you're sliding in from that DM, it's going to be a little difficult. But outside of that, I think the most successful people I know reply to emails in like 5 minutes. Like they say that about Bezos. They say like, if you send a good cold email to somebody, that not just like networking, reaching out to somebody trying to sell them, but like, here's why I'm interested. Here's what I've done. Here's why I'm excited about this. And you stick out even a little bit. if you have a 10% success rate, that's really strong. Like if you send 10 emails and one person gets back to you, and I've heard a ton of stories where people have had coffee with somebody and it turned into a job. Like these stories happen.
What would you say in that email?
I would say, here's what I've been up to in the last 7 years. Here's 3 reasons or 2 reasons why I love what you do. Here's why I think I can be helpful, and keep it pretty succinct. And I'd be interested in talking if you ever have a chance. I understand if you're busy. If not, it's totally fine. And ultimately, I think 9 out of 10 people will, I honestly think probably 5 of them will say, sorry, I wish I could, I'm too busy. Like, I don't think you'll get ignored by 90%. But again, I think most of the experience we have reaching out is like trying to sell something. We're trying to ask for something. And if it's not like I need a job, and it's more like I want to learn what you do, I know that I ignore 90% of emails that are trying to sell something. But if it's somebody like, hey, I just started in CX and I'm struggling for X, Y, and Z, and I really appreciate what you've given to the community. Do you have 5 minutes? Like, I'll give that person an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on the framing, but I think that's like anyone that doesn't have a traditional kind of background, traditional experience. But if you're really passionate, you're like, no, you're not passionate about like insurance, like stop. But if you genuinely have a story as to why you're passionate about what a company is doing, and I think you'll get more swings than you miss. You'll get more hits. Very good. I'm definitely not the baseball kind of
He's obviously
person.
not a golfer.
Yeah. Yes. But I think it's underrated. My jobs were all kind of like building something online. Somebody reaches out to me, or I reach out to somebody, and that turns into something. And I think that just swing more, but not in a like pathetic. That was a good analogy. The just swing. Okay.
Just swing.
Eventually you get it.
Gretzky, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's cliche, but it's true.
You also miss 100% of the shots that you take when you don't aim.
That's
right?
fair
like,
too. Yeah.
As you're saying, like formulate.
Keep going, Dave.
Formulate it well.
Keep going.
Put it together. Reach out to the right people.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's like that backdoor kind of like. There's a book called like the what's the book called, like the Third Door, which is a good book about this kind of like idea of, most people, unless they have a very stacked experience, don't get the job by like applying on the HR portal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unless you have a stacked experience and you're the perfect person for this job, because if you're trying to switch to a different part of the business, you're not getting that from hiring, like jumping on like lever.com and applying. It's just not.
So I think, to summarize, it seems that one of the keys to success is to know what you need to know.
Yeah.
And ultimately do something in a way that is authentic, that is genuine, and it is a way that kind of stands out from the norm.
Yeah.
Because everything you're talking about is to stand out from the norm. The norm in CX is not the greatest experience. So even if you just do regular good, it's going to lead to the next level.
Yep.
So everybody, try to stand out, do what you need to do. Don't be afraid of failing. And Ellie, we really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
People can find me, Eli Weiss, ELIWEISSS and extra s.com.
For savings.
The same name. Yeah. The same name on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Links in the comments.
Links in the comments.
Thank you for tuning in to the Grow with the Flow podcast. If you want to reach out to myself, Dove, or Dave, you can check us out in the links. See you next time.